So good morning to all. So we had the privilege of being the first this morning with financial technology. So my name is Sasha Žiković from Faculty of Economics and Business, University of Rijeka. And I guess my paper is the first with Marija Čuljak from Croatian Financial Service Supervisory Agency and Bojan Tomić, my PhD candidate, which he actually works at Effectus University College. After that we'll have, but I hear that they will not be present, Dan Bodul and Paula Jakovac with possibilities of e-justice during the COVID-19 crisis, digital justice in digital work economy. Then Francesco Gasparini from University of Marconi, Rome, and I hear that he is also not here. Big data as a new commons, hoping that they will get later here. Then Ana Poščić, University of Rijeka Faculty of Law, and Adriana Martinović towards a regulatory framework for artificial intelligence and EU approach, and Jovan Zafirovski from St. Kirill and Method University, Central Bank Digital Currencies and Innovation in the Realm of Money. So we are actually what? Three out of 5 here, right? Not bad, so this is more than half. Okay, so I shall start with the first one. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'm going to talk today about the value of picking sectors in cryptocurrency optimization, which probably sounds a bit strange because predominantly people have only heard of cryptocurrencies, not of sectors within cryptocurrencies. So we're going to try to exploit that to see if we can get any better results if we treat cryptocurrencies as dealing with separate sectors. So first of all, it all evolves around the first and the most important cryptocurrency that everyone heard of is Bitcoin, and basically it's peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Of course, we now have a whole universe of cryptocurrencies, but this one is known to the general public. But of course, when we are dealing with financial optimization, Bitcoin is going to be just one of the variables we look at. Looking at the open sources of it, optimization targets we use, pursuit of undervalued assets, and basically the sectors. So the sectors we're looking at are finance, exchanges, and business services. So we treat cryptocurrencies, we divide them in these 3 sectors based on what basically they do. Previous studies on this subject, there are not a lot. I mean, basically because this is quite a new area of research, and predominantly it's not done so much by the economists, but predominantly mathematicians. So this whole crew is basically mathematicians, people from Humboldt University in Berlin, in Germany, and basically we work on a joint Horizon project, Horizon 2020, and basically this is one of the outcomes of this research. So it's, as you can see, so it's Hadle, he is the leader of the group, basically 2019, and we have Simici 2018, Triboro, a student of Hadle 2017, Petuhina, Triboro, Hadle, again his students 2018. So you see the world is quite small in this regard. Methodology and data we used, basically it's publicly available daily prices in US dollars for 65 cryptocurrencies collected from CoinMarketCap, in the sense that we used 50 cryptocurrencies which are, let's say, the most liquid, the biggest ones. So top 50 cryptocurrencies in the cryptocurrency universe, plus 5 cryptocurrencies, so 5 main cryptocurrencies out of each of these sectors I told you. So basically it's this 5, 5, 5, 5 plus the 50 as the most liquid. Data were collected for a period of August 2019 to the end of February 2020. And basically, we played around with a couple of optimization targets. So basically the classical one, everyone learns about in school, and basically it's Markovic's modern portfolio theory, so minimum variance model. But of course, we extend it further to minimum CVAR, so it's minimum conditional VAR, so minimum conditional value at risk, which is not actually value at risk, but it's actually expected tail loss. So basically the losses that occur beyond certain probability. So if we are measuring value at risk at 99%, or in this case, we are measuring value at risk at 95%, basically it's the average of the remaining 5% in the tail So let's say the average of the extreme losses. Then we'll try to perform optimization by maximizing the Sharpe ratio, then maximizing stable tail adjusted return ratio, or STAR. This is basically the Sharpe ratio, which doesn't include standard deviation as here in Sharpe, but basically it's return versus conditional VaR. Maximum utility function and maximum mean return as let's say crazy hazardous attempts to optimize the returns of the portfolio, but just let's say ignoring the risk and going after the maximum return possible. And basically we conduct the research in 2 steps, and I'll show you how. So basically just to show you the goal functions. So this is the classical minimum variance setup. So basically we are minimizing the risk measured by standard deviation or variance in this case. And basically there is no short selling allowed. So everything has to have a weight higher than 0. Why is this interesting? Because, yeah, I forgot to tell you this. Basically, if you look at all of this research and previous research, they all found a quite strange phenomenon that basically you do not achieve any gains by optimization, but basically that if you compose an equally weighted portfolio, it will perform superiorly. So basically, it's a thing you don't usually encounter in normal markets, let's say classical, traditional assets. But here, really, there is no difference between running an optimization and basically whatever measure you're using and just setting up an equally weighted portfolio. So it's a bit crazy result, and we try to beat that result. So can we do better than this? Can we do better than equally weighted portfolio? Minimization of conditional valued risk. So basically, I didn't want to write the whole equation, but basically whoever deals with risk management knows what is CVAR. So we are just minimizing VAR. Then maximize Sharpe ratio, maximize STAR ratio. So this is maximum Sharpe. So basically the ratio of extra gain versus extra measure of risk. And this is extra gain versus extra, let's say, unit of conditional VAR. Maximum quadratic utility function. Basically here we're attempting to form the whole efficiency frontier and basically play around with indifference curves, basically your risk appetite or investors' risk appetite. And the last one, which is the most hazardous one, is basically just running after the historically highest return and disregarding risk total. So these are the results. I'll just tell you what are the interesting findings. So first of all, this is CRIX. What is CRIX? CRIX is basically the benchmark for cryptocurrencies. So it's also, it has been constructed again by the Humboldt University in Germany. And basically this is the, let's say, the world benchmark for cryptocurrencies. So how cryptocurrencies perform. So this is it, CRIX. So let's say if cryptocurrency universe was Zagreb Stock Exchange, I mean, this would be a CROBEX. So basically a benchmark. So these are basically how we run our models. So based on different functions, like I explained, so what we are maximizing. And if we look at annualized returns, we see that basically the highest one is strangely not the one that prefers the maximum return, which is okay. Again, double. Let's say then CRIX, so we beat the market by 2 if we run this dangerous optimization. But basically the best one is, let's say, the safest one in the sense that it's minimization of conditional VAR, and it brings the highest annualized returns. So it's basically the best of both worlds in the sense it gives you the one of the best, let's say, safety measures, and on the other hand, in our case, gives you the highest return, annualized return. If you look at where's the drawdown, which is actually the more problematic metric in real life than just a standard deviation. So basically, this is the biggest loss you encounter. We again see, okay, some expected stuff in the sense that maximum STAR and just running after the maximum return, of course, creates the biggest problem for you, and you can basically go bankrupt on your portfolio. And we see that here in this case, if you look at maximum utility and classical Markovich and basically minimization of COVAR, you're pretty much the safest bet here. So 27, 29, 27 is basically pretty much here and there. So basically, these are the cumulative returns for each of these optimized portfolios. And now what we did here, so first of all, this is for 50 most liquid, biggest cryptocurrencies. So now we wanted to add, and we added in this portfolio, basically the five main cryptocurrencies for each sector to see if we get better results. So basically do the sectors as we define them matter in this case, and clearly you see they matter. So for instance, if we look at annualized returns, so let's say 144, so 144%, and we see here almost 200%. Even if you look under any other, let's say classical Mark, which is set up 73%, in this case 94. So basically we see that there are significant differences, and we cannot conclude the same thing as other researchers in the sense that it doesn't matter how you optimize the sub equally weighted portfolio will win. In this case, there are clear advantages, or let's say it makes a difference if you treat cryptocurrencies as belonging to different sectors. Worst drawdowns, so the worst losses experienced in that period are also, let's say, similar in size if you look at the best performance, but much better if you look at not the best performance in this sense. So basically, these are the results to cut the whole story short. Basically, our results and this methodological approach are contributing to considering investment opportunities in cryptocurrencies market. What was proven previously, basically we didn't have to prove it here, is that basically by including cryptocurrencies, you do get benefits versus the traditional assets. So if you compose traditional assets and cryptocurrencies, you get better risk return. So let's say Sharpe or star ratios, and basically you're better off because cryptocurrencies are clearly not perfectly correlated with traditional assets. The only thing that beats and basically pushes out in some of the research, it was shown, cryptocurrencies is gold, which is again not strange because gold is sort of a contrarian investment, and it looks like cryptocurrency is also sort of contrarian investment, but not so strong as gold. So in the sense of being a contrarian asset, definitely gold is better than cryptocurrencies, but cryptocurrencies again allow you for some diversification. So if we consider cryptocurrencies market as composed of different sectors based on what the coins do, basically it's definitely justified and it definitely brings a difference. And portfolio with 20% allocation to sectoral cryptocurrencies of lower market capitalization are achieving higher value across all implemented performance measures. So basically, this is the trick that previously, how we achieved this, that basically this is the tricky part. It means that people usually optimize just the most liquid stuff. But the thing is, if you're looking at the liquid stuff, once it gets liquid, you're already too late because you're always looking at historical data. So you can never catch a new star, a rising star, because it's usually low market capitalization and then it explodes and goes to the top. So basically, this can be explained. I mean, this can be one of the explanations why this happened and why our results are so significantly better, because in this way, by looking at the, let's say, most attractive and most, let's say, famous cryptocurrencies according to their sectors, we often pick up something that would not be usually considered according to their market capitalization. So this is probably the trick, how we manage to pick up the future rising stars. And basically it shows that categorizing cryptocurrencies into sectors, which is not usual and which is really done, basically really has some benefits to it. So I hope I was not too boring and too long with this. So thank you for listening, and I'm open to any questions. So do we have any questions? I guess, what, no? Okay.
Maybe at the end of the session, we can have a
sure thing
about all the presentation, because I have something very close to your presentation. Maybe it's not economic analysis, but it's linked to the cryptocurrencies, and maybe we can discuss together some issues. Yeah.
Great. Excellent suggestion. Okay, thank you. So now we'll move on to Anna Porcic and Adriana Martinovic with a paper towards a regulatory framework for artificial intelligence and EU approach. So Anna Porcic, please. The floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Adriana Martinovic actually, because I'm starting the presentation, but Anna will continue later on. So, hello everyone. I'm still seeing this screen with
sorry.
Okay. Okay, great. So we are happy to be here, and I would like to thank the organizers for going on with the conference even under these grim circumstances. Anna and I have prepared the presentation and the paper concerning the EU approach to regulating artificial intelligence. So we have divided the time among us. So I will first give an overview of the key terms and definitions and a sort of a snapshot of the emerging EU regulatory approach in this area. After that, Anna will continue concentrating on the loopholes associated with the use of and application of artificial intelligence in one area, and that is the product liability regime. So we have chosen just this area among the very different fields where AI is applied and where regulation is needed, because obviously we thought we were limited by time, but it turns out that we have more time than expected. But nevertheless, I promise that we will keep to our initial schedule and plan. So, as we all know, artificial intelligence, or AI, is becoming one of the key technologies of the 21st century, and it is actually fusing the digital, biological, and physical worlds in an unprecedented manner. Some say that it is even challenging the very idea of what it means to be human. Ideas about artificial intelligence are not new. For centuries, people dream about intelligent machines. Those dreams have started to become a reality at least since the 1940s and 50s. And since then, we have seen how the periods of exaltation with AI have interchanged with the periods of stagnation of interest and investment in the AI, sorry. But nevertheless, AI is here to stay. It is among us, whether we like it or not, or whether we even know it or not. AI is in everything from diagnosing illnesses to virtual assistants to risk assessment mechanisms in the banking and insurance sector, to the more obvious examples such as self-driving cars. So what's new and different about AI this time? What's the hype all about? This time we have a variety of technological advancements, such as cheaper computing power, cloud computing, massive amounts of data which we can transform and process into useful information. We have the development of complex algorithms, which especially the deep learning techniques, which rely on neural networks and basically mimic the human brain and use computer vision, natural language processing, etc. In other words, we have that critical mass of resources required to fully develop the potential of AI. But what exactly is it? It's a notion which is difficult to define because it's a moving target. It develops over time, and there is no single universally acceptable definition. I'm sure that for many of us, AI is a synonym for intelligent machines or robots, but it's actually so much more. One of the pioneers in this field, Professor Nielsen from the Stanford University, described artificial intelligence as the activity devoted to making machines intelligent. And intelligence is that quality that enables an entity to function appropriately and with foresight in its environment. So AI systems basically display intelligent behavior by analyzing their environment and taking actions with some degree of autonomy to achieve a specific goal. It's a combination of different technologies, data, automated cognitive processes, etc. It's important to highlight that AI is not just about hardware devices where it is connected with robotics, but it can be also purely software-based. So we will focus on the European Union law approach to defining and regulating AI. This issue has been on the political agenda in the European Union in the last couple of years. Since 2018, many policy papers and studies were published, as well as working groups on this issue have been established. So I will not enumerate all of them. The main concern is to develop AI that can benefit people and society. There are, of course, many risks associated with the application of AI, not just because it's so difficult to understand, its application is difficult to understand, but also because AI is basically capable of exponentially replicating human bias and with some unforeseen consequences, and in most of the times in very hidden ways. So the EU has put forward the mission to build a trustworthy AI environment. And that is precisely the purpose of any regulation, to protect humans and society from harm. So that means that we have to incorporate all the existing principles such as responsibility, transparency, privacy, protection against discrimination and bias in any existing as well as new regulation concerning AI. There's actually a dramatic background to the EU approach in this area. And this is because the underlying idea is that the way we approach AI right now, today, will define the world we live in for decades to come. And this is unnerving because there is still no systematic legal initiative concerning AI. There's a patchwork of national regulations and EU initiatives. And this, of course, undermines legal certainty. The latest initiative by the Commission is White Paper on Artificial Intelligence, which was published in February this year. And the main intention is to develop, to further stimulate the innovation and AI technology. But of course, it has to be embedded in the European values. And there is an inherent tension here with this promotion of innovation and preserving the existing values and the social and economical tasks of the European Union. Of course, any new regulation will have to be built upon the existing regulations in various fields. And one example will be the product liability regime, which will Anna talk about later on. The main problem is those rules were already under Commission's scrutiny in 2018, but now they have to be updated, keeping in mind that artificial intelligence is, as I said, a moving target, and that technology develops much, much faster than the law can. So with this thought in mind, I'm giving over the microphone to Anna, who will further elaborate on this issue. Thank you.
Hello to everyone. I'm really glad to be here with you, even in those virtual settings, but this is our reality last couple of months. So I will continue the topics that Adriana started, as we have heard that there are so many topics that can hinder problems from the perspective of artificial intelligence. Autonomous systems have so many different features and characteristics that cannot be determined in advance and may result in a damage to end users. So unintended outcome can cause some damage. But also another point is that AI systems are so complex and involve a lot of different actors like manufacturers, distributors, users. So in those complex interrelations, there are some questions that have to be addressed. When we talk about responsibility, the key question is which actors are responsible for the damage resulting from the use of AI systems. Well, the first addressee, of course, is a producer of the system. But having in mind the peculiarities of the AI systems, we should propose a question whether also we should attribute certain responsibility to the other actors and users of the system as well. That's why further research and analysis is needed in the field of non-contractual liability. In this respect, the Commission published a report on the safety and liability implication of artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and robotics. In EU, we have some directives that can provide us some answers, and one of them is the Product Liability Directive that imposes a strict liability regime on the producer for the damage caused for the use, and not for the use, just for the damage caused in the defect of the product. Until now, the EU legislator has not decided whether this strict liability regime also covers operators and users of the autonomous systems. We know that AI systems have a capability of self-learning, adapting to new circumstances, and those situations cannot be perceived at the outset. So the task of finding a responsible person will not be straightforward, as so many different actors will have to be taken into consideration. Also, new technological development has blurred the dividing line between product and services. They are interconnected. The software is one example that could be also problematic from the perspective of AI, because software can be part of a product or sold separately. The software programmer could be held liable if the defect is caused by the hardware, but if it's sold separately, maybe he could escape responsibility. The Product Liability Directive defines products as all movables, whether incorporated into another movable or immovable. So further clarification is needed concerning the question whether software and data are products as well. The directive does not apply to services and license rights. So the situation is as follows. Article 2 of Product Liability Directive applies on the bundle of hardware and software. In those situations, if software is defective, the directive will apply. But as I mentioned before, there are situations where software can be sold separately. So we know the software can take a lot of different shapes and forms, so it has to be clarified if it's product or service. And also that's why the scope of this directive will also be adapted and clarified, so to include also situations in which damage has resulted from the digital content or software. So we have seen that there are many challenges concerning to the question of strict liability. It will have to be decided which actors should bear the responsibility and the consequences. As mentioned before, a lot of actors are involved, so it's a situation of complex value chain. So it's important, of course, to define AI and then decide on responsible person. But also, we have to have in mind that too much regulation could disincentivize innovators to develop new products. So again, we have to find a balance, of course. So there are two possible directions proposed in the doctrine. One is to have a general clause, general rule, and this general clause, of course, as all broad definitions, may be flexible enough, but may, of course, maybe lack of legal certainty. On the other hand, the idea is to propose a sector-specific regimes. As we know, those sector-specific regimes may be also a good starting point because they collect experience from various sectors, but also they need a lot of time to develop and to adapt to new technological improvements. So what do we think? That strict liability will not be the answer without the necessary accompanying insurance schemes. There are a lot of other questions to be resolved, and one of them are also threshold, the burden of proof, and the possibility of insurance. The burden of proof is most problematic because sometimes it can pose an obstacle to the injured party, because the injured person has to prove the damage, the defect, and the causal link between the damage and the defective product. So, of course, national law should facilitate the burden of proof for the injured person. It's also suggested that the burden of proof is connected to the compliance with cybersecurity and other safety regulations. But the problem is, according to the directive, is that the directive requires the victim to prove a defect, and national laws on causation and evidence apply. So also, product liability directive doesn't refer to cybersecurity breaches in the product, so it's debatable whether all those situations are also covered. And another point that we have to mention, and we think it's really important, is defense risk defense. It means that the producer will not be held liable if the defect has not existed at the time the product was put into circulation. And we know that our products evolve over time. The algorithms are sometimes difficult to predict and understand, and sometimes they require special knowledge. So this may also create problems for the victims in their claims. Of course, there's obligation of the producer to put safe products on the market. AI system must meet the minimum of safety standards. So the problem could rise in connections to the autonomous systems that may operate independently of their creators. So the question is that we pose to ourselves is that for how long would a producer or designer be held liable? One of the ideas, of course, to have a holistic approach that will take into consideration the liability of operators, owners, insurance, as well as matter of redress in the value chain. There's also uncertainty as to the allocation of responsibility between different economic operators in the supply chains. It means that those questions, all those questions, they have to be addressed in a way that departs from the traditional civil law doctrine. The challenge for civil law is to make a well-defined allocation, division of responsibilities between designers, producers, operators, service providers, and users. In this context, European Parliament published a resolution on civil law rules on robotics. And in this resolution, Parliament proposes to have a compulsory insurance scheme, compensation fund, and a union register. The idea is that those liability rules must make a fair balance between protection of innovation and protection of citizens. So it means that those gaps will have to be confronted in a comprehensive way. We have heard that different national rules could hinder free movement of persons, services, but as well as ideas. So minimum standards are necessary. The Commission, as Adriana said before, proposed to complement existing legislation and enact new where needed. But before enacting or amending certain legislation or regulation, its scope of application must be precisely defined. We have seen, we have heard that the notion of artificial intelligence is difficult to define. It's really rather vague notion. So it's difficult to find a comprehensive and precise definition, but any accepted definition must be accurate enough, but also flexible to cover all possible future technological innovations, improvements, developments. So we heard that AI system poses challenges in the area of liability, data, autonomy, product safety. There are numerous points that have to be addressed in the existing legislation, but every legislative intent has to follow the specificity of AI system. What we conclude? We conclude there is urge of close cooperation between legislators, IT experts, as well as economists. So the legislator, we have to be original, but also adhere to traditional human and ethical values. And thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, great, thanks. So as Jovan suggested, let's keep the questions for the end. And now I would please ask Jovan Zafirovsky with his subject, Central Banking, Digital Currencies and Innovation in the Realm of Money.
Thank you very much. Dear all, hello from Skopje. It's my pleasure to be with you today hopefully next year we will be lucky enough to enjoy the wonderful Adriatic coast. Congratulations to the organizers for their efforts to organize the conferences such difficult times. My name is Jovan Zafirovski. I'm associate professor at the Faculty of Law in Skopje, and as some of you at this session, I'm a lawyer. Since I'm the last presenter, I'll be very brief, but we have enough time even for questions and discussion later on. In the monetary sphere, the recent crisis has shown two important things. Firstly, at least for now, the cryptocurrencies are not safe haven assets, as some people claim that they will be, as it is the case with the gold, for example. The value of Bitcoin has dropped at the beginning of the pandemic. And secondly, only the sky is the limit for the central bankers as far as the money creation or monetary creation is concerned. Trillions of dollars, pounds, yens were pumped into the economy for stimulating the demand. And this is nothing new. As Douglas E. French has said, history shows that central bankers have but one strategy to cure all things, especially their past mistakes: print more money, with their plans for stabilization resulting just in opposite. This massive liquidity, at least for now, is not a problem, because people are spending less, which means velocity of money is low, and inflation is either low or non-existent. But the things might change overnight, and inflation and even hyperinflation might destroy the economic savings of the people. Even today, there is a strong discrepancy between the real economy that is shrinking and the financial markets that are surging. There is no logic in the connections between those trends. The principal idea behind a cryptocurrency is to create a monetary system that will be neutral and outside the state powers. The blockchain technology offers a possibility for bridging the double spending problem, which makes the third or trusted party, which by definition is the central bank, obsolete. On one hand, in terms of lower, even in some developed countries, negative interest rates, the cash is attractive and provides anonymity. But on the other hand, central banks are keen to reducing the cash in the economy in order to make their monetary policy more efficient, especially with negative interest rates, because the cash is a note that brings zero interest rates. When you have negative interest rates, it makes them much more attractive. Also, the pandemic will foster the efforts and arguments for cashless economy, because the cash as a medium of exchange is perceived as a factor that contributes to the spread of COVID-19. The real question is how to use the modern technology in a way that even in a cashless economy, the people are able to hold a risk-free central bank money. The issue of a new form of central bank money, that is the central bank digital currency, alongside with traditional cash and central bank deposit, might be a good solution. But the problem is that there are multiple ways of how to do it, and the present paper entitled Central Bank Digital Currency, Innovation in the Realm of Money, is a modest attempt to contribute to the debate on the legal questions arising from the introduction of this new form of money. This is a work in progress. I still haven't finished the paper because the recent crisis has dramatic impact on the global monetary and financial system. For the time being, not so important changes have been made, but I strongly believe that in the near future we will see dramatic changes in the monetary system, especially. And also, many of the leading central banks in the world are considering the possibility for launch of the central bank digital currencies, but there are no concrete results yet. A recent survey by the Bank of International Settlements showed that most of the central banks are conducting research into the central bank digital currency, but their issuance is unlikely on short or medium term, at least for now. The research starts with a presentation on the taxonomy of money that is based on 4 key properties: issuer, form, accessibility, and transfer mechanism, by using the famous money flower. Here, the key question is who can have access to central bank digital currency, and a decision on a wholesale or retail central bank digital currency has to be made. That is a key question. The former, that are restricted to a limited group, basically financial institutions, will not change things dramatically, because these institutions are already using central bank digital money, central bank deposits. But the later might be a game changer that will open series of legal questions in future. And these questions are the core of my research, and include the legal basis for the introduction of this new form of central bank money. The question, should they have the same legal tender status as banknotes and coins today, for instance, the euro? Legal tender status implies that central bank digital currencies would have to be accepted as a means of payments at any locations and under any conditions. Now the dilemma is how can it be done offline? It is impossible, but there are other open questions, as the organization of the system that might be decentralized, which is the key feature of the cryptocurrencies, without a central ledger, that will provide anonymity, as is the case with cash and cryptocurrencies. Or we have some mild version of the system, or a system based on deposit accounts within the central banks, that will be not so revolutionary and will open the door for unavoidable disintermediation of the financial system. At the end of the article, I would like to resume to make a list of advantages of the introduction of the central bank digital currency, related to the new options for the monetary policy makers. It opens some new possibilities for them. And above all, the option for a substitution of the cash that will keep the anonymity of the transaction. That is the one point of the conclusion, I may say. And the other point are the disadvantages, which in my view are strongly related to the risk for the stability of the financial system. That is a brief presentation of my work. That is, as I said, still work in progress. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to hearing your comments and questions, maybe.
Okay, thank you, Professor Zafirovsky. So now we open the floor for questions. So you wanted to ask me something, right?
Yes, I just want to hear your opinion. Why the cryptocurrency were not safe haven in the recent crisis, when we saw market crash everywhere? It was also on the currency market. There is not so. I thought that in those difficult times, maybe the cryptocurrency will go up, as we accepted, as we thought that there will be a safe haven, maybe digital gold.
I mean, there is no defined answer, no definite answer, definitely, for this. But it's, to me personally, it looks as, in theory, you're absolutely right. So in theory, it was considered up to the crisis as digital gold, even better than it, because you don't have the costs of basically protecting it and storing it. But if you look at who are the investors in the market, it still is a fringe market, in the sense, if you talk to the finance people, they are still considering it really exotic, and basically it's hard to put a value on it. So predominantly it was the IT people and IT companies investing in this, and they're not finance people. So it's more, for me, more, let's say, a passion for such innovation than still a classical financial product. So I think that basically, although they were expecting that the financial market will push more in the time of crisis for this, it basically didn't happen. Again, the same thing happened. Basically, it was again real estate, which is funny considering the 2008 crisis. It was again going to real estate, gold, and basically such stuff. If it wasn't a COVID crisis, but a classical economic crisis, I mean, the history would again repeat itself, and it would again go to energy. So only because of COVID and basically the lockdown of economy, it didn't go to energy. So that's why it was strange this time compared to other historical events, because you always have this. When there is a crisis, I mean, you know how the Americans say, you need 3 B's: beans, bullion, and bullets. So basically, you know, so people are investing in this stuff. So it's food, basically gold, and usually it's energy, because it's what you consume even in the worst crisis. Except in this was a strange crisis in the sense because it was not economical. So I think this is the reason that basically everyone was surprised. I can tell you, even this group from Germany and from Singapore, they were expecting more diversification from cryptocurrencies, but it didn't happen. I think the reason is because it's still not mainstream. It's still a fringe market, and the finance people, so not the IT people, but the finance people are still scared of it.
Yeah. Yes, but on the long run, we will see some changes, because until now, in this year, 2020, we have $4 trillion more in the economy, not in the economy, on the financial markets, which means that the dollar has to lose its value at a certain point. Is it an opportunity for the cryptocurrencies? Will we see?
Yeah, you have so many opposing opinions even on this, on dollar. I agree with you. The classical theory will tell you it has to lose value, but on the other hand, I mean, dollar is not a classical currency. It's the reserve currency of the world. So I think if you look at the history, I'm fearful that maybe the inflation will spill over to the rest of the globe, not to the US, because it always happens like this. Because if we did it with kuna or with denar or with yen or whatever, we will have hyperinflation. But when you do it with dollar, you have inflation on the global level, and the US is okay.
Because it goes out.
Yeah. I wanted to ask one question regarding this paper regarding laws. So your personal take. So I'm talking to Ms. Martinovic and Postic. So how will Europe solve this dilemma, which is really interesting? I mean, who is to blame? Is it the producer or the autonomous system, which is intelligent? Will we have something like in Hollywood movies, in the sense, you know, AI, in the sense that you'll be decapitating robots for what they did?
Anna,
or software.
Like? So, Anna, would you like to answer? Just turn on your microphone. Microphone.
Sorry, I forgot the microphone. There is no straight answer, you know. There are so many open possibilities. As usually in Europe, they put some minimum standards, and then maybe they leave to the countries to maybe to impose maximum or some other level of protection. And probably you heard there has been speaking about also giving machines like legal personality, and there is another different space of problems that it can open. So I think they will leave just with resolutions, with soft law instruments, and then leave it to the countries to develop maybe some stricter laws, or I don't know how it's interesting for us also to see what will be the final approach of EU, but we do not expect some revolutionary or some new. But we really believe that it's not the producer, the designer that would contribute to the damage. So we really think that there are also different actors that can take part in this responsibility, this value chain. And of course, there's a question of the autonomy of working independently of AI system, and of the question when they start learning and adapting to new circumstances. I mean, we are not experts, of course. We always say in these autonomous features and technical aspects, but what we read, what we learned is that the problem is with this independently working of AI system. We'll see. Maybe Adriana, do you have something?
Well, there are some serious discussions about giving robots legal personality similarly as companies, but that doesn't answer the question about damage liability. I mean, so that's an issue that I think will be debated in the years to come.
And taxation also.
Yeah, taxation also, right.
Do you think it's similar to a kid in the sense, like, until you're 18, I mean, you break something, basically your parents will pay for it, right?
Yeah, right. That's a good metaphor.
In the sense, it looks to me like, you know, if we give just legal status, like in the companies, I think it's like clearing the responsibility from the developer. Like, you know, now it's the problem. So if anything goes wrong, I'm protected by a wall, and basically if some people get killed or whatever happens, I mean, it is the system's fault. It's not mine. It looks like
yeah, but the main problem is those complex algorithms and deep learning techniques, because after some point the machine is learning by itself, and even the slightest pixel can alter the image or the understanding that the machine has. So that's really far from the responsibility of the developer alone. That's basically one issue.
Very interesting, very interesting topic. I'm looking forward to reading your paper. I read recently. I read a book, Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. It changed my view on the world. Maybe you know it. It's brilliant. It's one.
Yes, we read it. Yeah.
It speaks about artificial intelligence a lot. What will come in some point of future.
Yeah, but it's here, so it's changing the world we live in right now. And
yeah, and there was one case very interesting about the autonomous cars, where they are making a decision how to drive. And they have options to with a younger guy who is respecting the rules, and a young guy that is not respecting the rules, and the older that is respecting the rules, and how it will decide whether it will go for to protect the younger life or the older one, which at one point will stimulate maybe disobedience of law, because the first is respecting the rules, the other one is not, and there we will have many moral or ethical issues, as you said. And I'm wondering what the European Union will decide, which are the European values.
Well, the European values are those which are
will be based on European values, and how to define them.
European values are actually determined in the Treaty of European Union. So those values are rule of law, protection against discrimination, democracy, and so forth. So those are the values. And just recently, I think maybe a couple of days ago, there was another study on the ethics of artificial intelligence. So that's basically what you're talking about. It's available, so it can be downloaded. So it's another study, it's another policy paper that the EU is producing, and it's very, very active in this field. So we have a proliferation of different studies and policy papers. But we have some difficult questions to answer and to regulate. So it's no wonder, yeah.
And we just try to open questions, and we think also that the main challenge will be to accept one definition of AI. It all depends on how you defined it. So that will be, of course, the starting point, because there are so many proposed definitions, and from really simple to really complex. So the scope of application will be the first starting point. We believe so. So we'll see.
Okay, thanks for this fruitful discussion. Basically, we did it in, we breached time a bit, but it was interesting to listen to this. So, okay, so thanks to everyone for participating, and hope to see you all in person.
Yeah.
Next year, if not earlier. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.